Just like when you get an organ transplant, you don't get a female heart transplant if you're a woman. You get a human heart. Okay, so muscle fiber is human. It's not male or female. Okay, there are no separate rules for training men and women. That's all socialization. That's all brainwashing. You know, so the same rules apply. The same high intensity principles apply. The same progression principles apply. Everything applies the same for men and women unless you choose not to do it. That's your choice. But if you want to maximize your potential, the same rules apply to men and women. It's human muscle fiber. Of course, there's different genetic variations. Yeah, I mean, a smaller person, not just man or not just male or female, a smaller person is not going to lift as much as a bigger person regardless. And they're, you know, generally, women have less muscle fiber than men, and generally, they may be weaker. But you're going to see a couple of women today who could kick most men's ass. So that isn't always the case. Okay, I first want to clear a few things up before I go on. Those are the 3 basic points. Okay, if anyone needs CEUs, you get 0.6 CEUs in the forms on the back table. Anyone that wants to join the NSCA or get information on becoming certified, there's also forms in the back table. I had some bad news last night. Some people are going to be disappointed. I mean, you're no more disappointed than I am. I mean, I was pissed off, but now I'm just disappointed. But I got a message on my answering machine last night at 11 o'clock, and my good buddy Brooks Kubik can't make it. He's a lawyer, and he had a legal emergency. So anyways, we're going to cover his topic, mental aspects of training. The whole clinic is going to go just like it was, except we're going to cover his topic. I'll cover part of it, Jamie will cover part of it, Linda Jo will cover part of it, and we're going to improvise. As far as interruption of speakers go, okay, the reason we had this rule, okay, some people may find it funny why we're having this rule about don't interrupt speakers. Okay, basically, if the speaker wants questions, you can go ahead and ask questions. We just don't want someone up raising a hand, you know, waving his hand, making a scene when someone's in the middle of talking. Okay, if something like, I'll take questions a few times during my talk, I want to take questions. But have the questions on what I'm talking about. Don't just come out of the blue with some off-the-wall thing. Stick to what the topic is about. And the reason we're doing that is because I've had some friends that have had clinics up and down the East Coast the last year or two. There's a lot of geeks in ties and white lab coats going around who like to disrupt clinics, you know, and start arguments. So if anyone does that today, we're going to kick their ass and throw them out. Okay? We're not going to take any shit from anybody. That's what Victor's for. My buddy Victor. Any geeks in white lab coats in here, it's like, Victor, get them. That's it. Okay, but all speakers, regardless, will be available for questions at the end of the clinic. So, some will take questions during the clinic, but we'll all be around for half an hour when the clinic's over. Also, we're all going to go over to Morton's Steakhouse on Connecticut and L, and you're all, invited to come join us. We're going to go chow down on red meat, bloody red meat after the clinic. Also, one more thing. I won't fucking tolerate any bad language. Okay. My talk today is going to be about the elements of productive strength training. And the reason I want to go first with this is because there's so many different groups in the strength training field. They're almost like different denominations in religion. People have real strong opinions. This is almost like a religion to a lot of people. To a lot of us, it's like that. Okay, the thing you got to do today is don't take differences of opinion personally. Okay, there's more than one way to train. That's why we're here. Okay, so if you want to power clean, power clean. I don't care. I mean, I don't power clean. I have reasons why I don't do it, but I mean, if you want to do it, fine. It's a good exercise if you like it. Part of it is enjoyment. We're going to talk about the enjoyment factor. There's thousands of exercises. You can't do all of them, right? So same thing with slow training. There's some people that like it. Not everyone that trains slow is a wimp. Drew train slow and cruise no limit. So we're going to talk about different ways. Explosive training, you may not like it, some people may like it. High intensity training, okay? So just have respect for whatever the different speaker is talking about, whether you train that way or not. You don't have to, okay? Now, the reason I'm going first is because the unifying factor, the factor that unifies all, regardless of what you believe in, is intensity. If you want to train slow, if you're not training as hard as you can, you're not going to get results. If you're not putting weight in the bar, you're not going to get results. The same thing if you're doing power cleans, the same thing if you're doing high intensity training. It's just not really going to be high intensity if you're not adding weight to the bar. So I'm going first as the unifying factor, because everyone who follows after me is still going to be following the same principles of high intensity. I don't mean one set puke in the bucket high intensity. I mean high intensity generally. Now this clinic today, it's an NSCA clinic. It's going to be different than most NSCA clinics you've been in before. We're not going to be talking about actin and myosin. We're not going to be talking about how to organize your weight room. We're not going to be talking about periodization of synchronized swimmers. We're not going to be talking about NSCA budgets. We're not going to be talking about NSCA elections and other boring stuff that puts you to sleep. Okay, I've slept through many of them. When I go to the national conferences, I sleep late almost every day. Miss going at noon, go back in the room, sleep for an hour, go back. Anyways, the thing that keeps this stuff interesting is passion. Okay, it's the love of strength training. We all love to train. We don't want to hear about bullshit, little, boring statistics, budgets, stuff like that. We're talking about training, the whole talk here today. This is an in-the-trenches clinic. It's going to be a coach's clinic, hands-on clinic, not a researcher's clinic. We need more hands-on clinics in the NSCA. We need more hands-on articles in the NSCA journals. So if you belong, speak up. Take them over state by state. One of the best talks I ever heard at an NSCA conference was in Atlanta by the great Olympic champion Al Order. He was a keynote speaker a couple of years ago. And Al's talk had no scientific stuff in it. It was all passion. He talked about his days as a kid with his York 110-pound barbell set, training in his basement, back in the days when training wasn't popular, back when they told him he was going to be muscle-bound. And, I miss those days, because that's when I started training. Everyone said you're going to get muscle-bound, you're going to get slow and stiff, and you play baseball, it's going to ruin your arm and all this kind of stuff. I never believed them. But we had a closer-knit group back then. This was before the fitness craze. Before the fitness craze, if you lifted weights, there was few of us around. I mean, you had a camaraderie, a brotherhood. And that's what I miss. I want to have that today, so even though we're talking about different things, I want to have that same camaraderie and brotherhood that we had before the fitness craze. Okay, the fitness craze over the last 20 years has been great because it's brought more people, to be fit, and it's brought more people. There's a lot more knowledgeable people now than there were 20 years ago. But the only bad thing is it's separated us into different groups and different cults in strength training. And people, just look on the internet. All you see is back and forth, backstabbing. Rather than similar to religion. I mean, if you talk about God, you don't talk about stained glass windows and argue about whether you have an organ in the church. Talk about God. Same thing with strength training. Talk about getting stronger. Okay, another thing that's going to be different today is the speakers today actually lift weights. You go to a lot of the NSCA clinics and you get some 12-inch arm professor. I mean, what the fuck does he know about lifting weights? He's up there telling you how to be strong, right? But anyways, all of our speakers lift, so they're not going to give you the scientific actin and myosin principles of how to get strong. Okay, no two people in the field agree on everything. It's going to be an open forum. One of the best clinics I've seen is one put on by Dan Riley a couple of years ago. So the NFL is split just like any other organization. All their strength coaches, they're split. I mean, They have the high intensity camp, they have the power clean, clean and jerk camp, they get the slow camp. And he put on a clinic a couple of years ago. We had 4 different NFL strength coaches. They all had totally opposite opinions. And they all get along great. One guy came up and said the opposite of the next guy, but they were all unified by progression and by intensity. So, same thing we're going to be doing today. I went to a NSCA conference a couple of years ago, and I was in the room with all the equipment, walking around. I was talking to a well-known PhD in the field. I won't say who his name is. I was talking to him for about 20 minutes. We get along really good. And all of a sudden, he asked me out of the blue, "Do you do power cleans?" And I said, "Well, I don't usually do them. My background's in powerlifting. So, I have nothing against you for doing them, but I don't usually do power cleans." He turned his back and walked away. So there's a lot of people like that around, and that's the problem with the organization. Dr. Wayne Westcott, who I think highly of, his view on strength training is there's only one significant factor that unifies all successful strength training programs. That is that you train at a high level of intensity, progressively in the anaerobic energy system. And that's it. Okay, all other factors are minor. Okay? Like a lot of the slow guys, one of my pet peeves with them, I think that slow training works. I'm not anti-slow. I do it sometimes. Once a month we have a slow day as a change of pace. But one of my pet peeves with some of those guys is they put more emphasis on the strength curve of their machine than they do with the strength of the guy using the machine. Okay, they never talk about progression. It's always minor details, okay? But even if you train it slow, progression is the key. See Drew, you see what I mean? Drew's one of the strongest guys in the world. The enjoyment factor, okay, I mentioned that earlier. You're better at what you like. Whatever your passion is, whatever you feel comfortable with. There's no right or wrong. If your background's in Olympic lifting and you feel comfortable doing Olympic lifting, you can teach the skills of Olympic lifting well, then stick with it. It's fine. If your background's in something else, whatever you enjoy, powerlifting, if your background's in, if you like slow training better, the enjoyment factor, that's one of the things that's left out. When you hear these debates, when you hear these back and forth catfights on the internet and in some of the magazines, like in Hard Gainer going back and forth every month, what's left out is the enjoyment factor. You can't argue with what someone likes to do. Also, there's a problem with science. Okay, not all the researchers agree. So you can't back a certain way, like you're going to read some article and you can say that Kramer and Stone said this. Well, Lambrinides and Carbonelli and Graves and and Westcott say something else. So even the researchers don't agree with each other. So that's why it even gets confusing when you try to back this stuff up by science, because the scientists don't agree either. The scientists focus on the body's physiological response to training. Okay? And that's why most researchers, they talk about what the body does after you move the equipment. Okay, that's a fact. Yeah, they know about the actin, the myosin, the breakdown. Yeah, they can talk about that, what the body does after you train. But they have no clue on how to use the modes and methods to get the response. Okay, or they'll focus on one mode or method. There'll be a philosophy that an organization stands for. Okay, every organization stands for a certain philosophy, and that's the problem. So they'll have pet researchers that focus on backing up that philosophy. And that's the problem. If we're going to improve science, the NSCA is supposed to bridge the gap between science and the hands-on practitioner, then we've got to be a true science. Science that's not just part truth. We've got to explore all the ways, all the methods that work. Okay, intensity is going to be the key, though, regardless. Okay, I'm assuming now that you're going to have good form. I'm assuming that you're going to have good mental focus. Some other speakers are going to be covering that today. But what I tell my people, I have a big sign in the gym that says focus, form, progression. Just like when you're a little kid, you're potty trained. When you're a certain age, you get a pat in the back for using the toilet. After you get to be a certain age, You don't get a pat in the back anymore. You're expected to wipe your butt. I mean, by the time you're 6 or 7 years old, you do it, right? No more pats in the back. So when you first start lifting weights, have good focus, have good form. It's like in the military. In basic training, they teach you how to salute an officer. You don't get a pat in the back for doing that. After a while, you go to jail if you don't do it. Okay, so focus and form are like that. It's automatic. It goes without saying. So when I talk about progression, I'm automatically assuming that you're going to have good focus and good form. Good form is automatic. When you go to failure, that doesn't mean that you can just get sloppy. You always use good form. Okay, so intensity is defined as the amount of work done per unit of time. So if you train for an hour, the more work you do in that hour, that's intensity. A lot of people have no idea what intensity is. They talk about going to the gym. I go to the gym 5 days a week. Right. They're in a building called the gym. They are in the building, They are talking about the Redskins and getting drinks of water and checking out the asses and, bullshitting. Okay, they're not really working out. They're in a building called the gym. Okay, there's a difference between being in a building called the gym and working out. High intensity training means, you barely have enough time to get air. Okay, you don't have time to talk. There's no mirrors to look at. Most people that are into this don't even have mirrors. We're going to talk about that later. So there are 4 ways to increase intensity. 4 ways within that. You get intensity, the amount of work done per unit of time, there's 4 ways to increase it. The first way is progressive resistance. That's the key way. If you don't do that, the other 3 ways don't matter. Okay, so the number 1 way that will work, regardless, is progressive resistance. The second way is going to muscular failure. The third way is reducing the amount of rest between sets, because that makes you work more per given time. If you're working out for an hour, you're resting less and you're working more. The fourth way is by using stricter form. The stricter the form, the more work you're going to do. So all the different philosophies that you're going to be hearing about, they balance these 4 ways in different percentages. It's not that complicated, but a lot of people never think of it that way because when they hear the term intensity, they automatically think that high intensity means, 1 set, all out, vomit. That's not just what it means. You could do singles even. If this is my philosophy. That's why I have no trouble seeing all the different ways how they work. Because if you're doing singles, that means you're just putting more emphasis on the first method of intensity, which is the most important one. But you're putting the most emphasis on progression. The higher the rep range, the more emphasis you have to put on going to muscular failure. If you're doing singles or doubles, you don't have to worry about failure because 1 is failure. 1 or 2 is failure. That's it. You get that 1 up, you're done. But the more reps you do, then the more emphasis you have to put on going to muscular failure, because you're training more towards muscular endurance and less towards pure strength. It's all strength training, but the farthest end you can go is a single. That's the ultimate, demonstration of strength. And the more reps you do, then the more emphasis you're going to have to put on going to muscular failure. Otherwise, if you're doing 9 or 10 reps and the last one isn't a gun to your head, then you're burning calories. So you don't want to use strength training as a calorie burning exercise. Like walking on the block. You're burning calories, but you're not going to build muscle. You're just wasting time. Okay, the third way is good form, like the slow people. They put more emphasis on that 1 way. See, all these 4 ways are in all the systems. It's just that some of them put more emphasis on one than the other. And the minimum rest, the high intensity people usually put more emphasis on minimum rest because they're doing higher reps. And the lower rep people are going to have to take longer reps because otherwise you're not going to be as strong. But these 4 ways pretty much cover all the philosophy, no matter what. So I have no problem understanding or seeing all the different methods and philosophies without taking it personally if someone doesn't agree with the way I think. I've done singles, I've done high reps, I do both. I think it's healthy to do both. And when you talk about periodization of training in cycles, well, I do something like that, but I don't do it exactly, the way the NSCA does it. But I believe in a change of pace. Every 3 or 4 months or so, I'll switch my routine around. Just because you get stale, you get bored. Everyone's going to get sick of their routine after 3 or 4 months. So you can train high reps 2 or 3 months, train low reps for a while. Whatever you enjoy, just go by enjoyment. Any questions right now? What we've gone over? No questions? I want some questions.
Okay, how about rest?
With minimum rest and high reps, because that's not what he does. If you're going to train a basketball player or a hockey player, then you're going to train him differently, because they're going up and down for like a minute and a half. With them, I train them higher reps, minimum rest. So it depends on the goal of the athlete that you're training, or the goal that you have, whatever you're trying to accomplish. But just the fast twitch fiber is 0 to 40 seconds. You're going to have to keep it in that area if that's the goal. Okay? Any other questions? Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Talk about singles and doubles. How about with young athletes? Is there any concern about maybe injury?
Yeah. I have a kid that I train right now who's 13, and he's the son of another guy that I train. And the father is getting good results. He wants his son to train. But when you have a pre-pubescent person, you got to be real careful. You don't want to go real heavy with them because their bones are still soft, they're still growing. So it's generally recommended to keep it fun for them. Like, you don't want to, because this kid will just work his butt off too much. He's the kind of guy that you got to pull back. You got to make him take a rest, because he plays football, he plays rugby, he plays everything. He works real hard. He kills himself. So you got to hold him back. He's still growing. His bones are soft, and until they get to be probably at least 15 or 16, I would keep the workouts higher reps. I wouldn't have them do singles.
But go to that muscular failure?
I'll still go to muscular failure, yeah. Still go to muscular failure, but have higher reps. Any other questions?
I have a question, Bob. How does sets fit into the energies? How do you see the number of sets before? How does that fit with you were thinking about training?
Well, that's one of those things that you're going to get different. You're going to get a different answer depending on what researcher you talk to. You know what I mean? So you can quote. There's no real known answer for that. It's just my opinion is and I didn't used to believe this, but as the years have gone on, I've come to learn that the harder you train, the less sets you have to do. That is true. It's one of the best kept secrets out there. But like I've done every type of routine there is. I've done 6 days. I've done 6 sets. But that usually just overtrains you, wears you out. The only way that's going to work is if you're not working hard. If you're not working hard, you can go to the gym 5 and 6 days a week and just screw around. But if you're working hard, it's impossible. It's impossible. So I call those drug routines. The 5 and 6 day a week routines are drug routines, because the people doing those routines, there's only one way around it. They're either not working or they're on drugs. That's it. Because if you're not on drugs, you can't go 5 and 6 days a week and work hard. It would be impossible. They probably, if they're not on drugs, they're training 5 and 6 days a week. They're severely overtraining, and they don't understand what hard is. They're overtrained or they don't know what hard is.
What's your baseline? When someone walks in off the street and is not a powerlifter, and you start training them, without blowing them up, what's your baseline when you start so that they actually want to come back the next time?
When I train somebody,
Right.
I don't always want them to come back. Sometimes they come in, I don't like them. I want to get rid of them. So it depends. You know what I mean? It's like I have what I call a phone test. So when someone calls me on the phone, you get rid of them real quick. You say, if someone calls, they sound like Roseanne. You just say, my goal is to train you like the Redskins, except we're not going to play football. Click. you know, or I'm going to get you as big and as strong as possible. I'm going to train you till you vomit. You know, I say vomit like 5 times. You know, quick, get rid of them. So yeah, it depends on the person. You know, you can usually tell by how they talk when they first call. You know, if they call you and they're like, well, I think I want to, you know, I want to check it out. You know, they want to check it out. You know, get rid of them. They have to know what they're getting into. If someone calls you, they understand what they're getting into. They want to work hard. They're not looking for gimmicks. Then I'm nice to them. You know, but you know, I'll work them in slow, build them up slow.
Let me rephrase that. When you start out slow, where do you begin?
Well, you start them out with weight. I'm a good judge of effort and strength. I can pretty much look at someone and judge where to start them at. So I start them out even lighter than what I judge them at, just so in case I'm making a mistake, there won't be a mistake. So I'll have them go to failure with a light weight, and they're going to be doing probably over 10 reps with it, and minimum sets the first time. And then from that point, you have a baseline, and then I just build them up from there. I don't say what percent of a 1 RM to do. Like, I think that's BS. I mean, how are you going to find out what the RM is and then hurt them? You know, it's stupid. I mean, they have these. They're talking all about how not to hurt somebody, doing 1 rep maxes, and they use that as the guide. You know, so I just get a baseline and then work it up from there. I log all the workouts, so every workout that I train somebody is written down. They're accountable for every rep. So I don't just have them come in and, you know, look at something, you know, pick up a bar and move it. No, I mean, every machine, every exercise, you know, you did 165 pounds for 7 reps last time, boom, do 8 today. You know, they have a goal in their head. They have a goal to break on every set. You know, that's the way you got to be productive. You have to put pressure on them, friendly pressure, but they need a little bit of pressure to, you know, to improve on every set. It's 1 set at a time. Any other questions?
What philosophy do you like the best? Do you like super slow, high intensity? Is there a preference for you?
I probably have evolved over the years to, right now, probably high intensity, definitely. But my background originally was in powerlifting. I'm a combination. I do high intensity training, but I still do low reps too. I'll switch back and forth. And I believe you can do high intensity, low rep training, which is really tough. I mean, if you're doing sets of 6 with minimum rest to failure, I mean, that's tough. So I do that a lot too. Sets of fairly low reps in a high intensity fashion. That's tough. Any other questions? Yeah, another big mistake people make when they design their programs and they say they're going to the gym, like what we talked about, they're going to the gym 5 and 6 days a week, is muscle overlap. Okay, they might list, and Jay's going to talk about this later, I'm just going to touch on it here, but they might list exercises like chest and back on Monday, you know, arms and shoulders on, you know, Tuesday and legs on Wednesday, however they do it, you know, they're all different. But now it's almost impossible to get the body parts into nice, neat categories like they list them in the magazines, because they might have bench press under the chest category, they might have dips in the tricep category, or, you know, however, the multi-joint exercises, you can't just put them in a nice, neat category. There's going to be a lot of overlap. I mean, if you were going to do a split routine, the only way you could do it is if it was like upper body, lower body, or a pure push-pull. That way you could do it. But what I tell people is, you know, you're probably not working hard enough if you can do that. And you're probably not doing cardio too. You're probably just doing weights and not doing any cardio. So you should be doing cardio and weights. And, you know, unless you like the smell of jock straps and sweat, you know, why go to the gym 4 days a week when you can get the same thing accomplished twice? I mean, why do upper body 2 days, lower body 2 days, when you can work the whole thing 2 days, and then do cardio in the other days. So anyways, if you train hard enough, it's not that you're going to be held back to twice a week. You're going to be physically unable to go more than twice a week. You're going to need sometimes more than, sometimes twice, you won't be able to go twice a week. Sometimes you might need 5 or 6 days off after a hard workout. Andrea knows, like, after a 50s day, Big Daddy Joe knows, after a 50s day, sometimes you take a week off because you're so sore.
What's that, a 50s day?
Another variety that we use, it's when you take, I got it from Dr. Ken, actually. Dr. Ken in Iron Island Gym, he does 50s days as a change of pace. It's when you pick out like 4 or 5 machines, and the object, and they're all multi-joint hard machines. No pec deck, no cable crossovers. I mean, we're talking about, leg presses, true squats, hard stuff. And the goal for the day is 50 reps on all the machines. And the weight is usually at a weight high enough so that you're not going to get that many. You might get 10 to 12 reps, so you have to go to failure several times to get 50. And near the end, it's like, it takes forever. But it's by the time you're done, you're done. You're not going to want to train for 4 or 5 days at least. Yeah, once it's a failure, it does work. My philosophy has evolved over the years, partly from my friendship with Drew. Drew is, I never did once it's a failure until a couple of years ago, and I've been trying it, and it does work. There's a lot of people who think that once it's a failure, it doesn't work, but that's probably because they haven't really given it a try, or they don't really understand what failure is. Muscular failure isn't just when the weight is uncomfortable. It's not when your muscles are starting to get tired or fatigued. It's when it's physically impossible to do another rep. It's like if a gun was to your head and you were going to die, you can't get that last rep up. That's what muscular failure is. And it's like going to what you previously thought was failure and doing several more reps. If you train like that, one set will work. Once it's a failure is probably all you need if you truly train that way.
Bob?
Yeah.
How about assisted reps? How does that fit into the scheme? Is that more intense, where someone helps you get?
It's variety. We do those sometimes. Just like we do sandbags sometimes. Like there's what I call the main meal and dessert. Okay? Some of these little extra things like the sandbag and the farmer's walk, manual resistance or throwing in some forced reps, I call those like dessert things. It's like the main course meal is the regular workout you do all the time. The planned workout. You always do the planned workout. And as a change of pace, not every time. Like 50s day isn't every time. We do 50s day once a month because it's so brutal. If you did it every day, you'd overtrain somebody and maybe hurt them. So like once a month, you just totally kick their ass. Then that saves them money. They're happy because they come in, they pay you twice a week. That week they only have to pay you once. So if somebody's broke, you just kick him in the ass and see him in a week, But it's a change of pace. So we'll do sandbag once every couple of weeks. Do farmer's walk once every couple of weeks. Throw in manual resistance every now and then. It's not something we do every time because normally, if you're training hard enough in your regular workout, then you don't need to do it every time. That'll be overtraining. Okay? Any other questions?
Is it possible to train with the intensity that you described, like that Drew does, and undertrain? In other words, you train really hard, but you're spacing your workout so much that you're actually undertraining.
Oh, you mean like too much recovery?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there is. I've written some articles about that because one of my pet peeves, okay, is people who, back 20, 30 years ago, Perry Rader, the Iron Man, one of the all-time greats in physical culture, okay, he was one of the first ones to come out with twice-a-week training. and that's back when 3 days a week was the most common way to train, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And that's the way most personal trainers will do it now because they want more money. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and, get paid 3 times a week. But, okay, if you're training hard, you can't do that. If it's whole body, it's impossible. But anyways, Perry Rader came out with twice a week, and, that was radical when that came out. I mean, very few people believed in it because they thought that wasn't enough. But now it's come to the point where it's almost mainstream. Twice a week is pretty much mainstream now for high-intensity people. But now it's gone to the extreme. There's been some articles in Hard Gainer over the last couple of years where guys have said, train once every 5 or 6 days, which sometimes, on a real hard day like I just said. But then there are some who do it all the time, when they're not even doing a hard workout. And there are some that train once a week now. And I've seen some articles of like once every 10 days now. It's like, why not just quit training? You know what I mean? So I mean, train once a year. So it's like, no, there has to be a cutoff where recovery ends. It used to be between 72 and 96 hours. They used to say that. I don't think that's always true. I think if you have a brutal workout, you might take well over 100 hours, like on a 50s day or something like that. But recovery and atrophy, there has to be a line between, So like recovery forever is not going to be productive. So atrophy begins somewhere, and I think that a lot of these people who say train once every 10 days, they don't like to train. They're just making up excuses.
But if they're still progressing, then maybe they're not.
Yes, it's possible to progress once a week or 1 to 10 days, but they probably could do better if they train more. You just that's like getting a senior report card. I mean, when you can get an A. So.
On that recovery thing, how do you adjust for your other activities in your life? Like in the past 12 months, I was on 7 days, 12 hours a day.
Right.
And I only trained once a week.
Right.
And I felt that I did reasonably well, but I still managed to drag myself down pretty low.
Right. Your job and things that you have in your life, probably that all takes recovery takes everything into account. I mean, if you're going through stressful times, you could be going through a divorce or bankruptcy or who knows. You know what I mean? IRS audit. I mean, you're going to have it's going to be harder to train. If you work as a bricklayer, you may need more recovery than a guy that works in an office job. So yeah, everything adds up to recovery. It's about how you feel. Yeah, if you feel exhausted and you feel better once a week, that once a week could work. I mean, it does work. It's a matter of what's going to maximize your potential. So what you should do is log your training. You keep records of what you do. Yeah, right. Because that's another real important thing. You should keep records of every workout you do. The time you start, the time you finish, what weights you lifted, how many sets, how many reps, how you felt, how much rest you took between sets, everything. Write it in there. That's the only way you're going to know what works. Okay, so, and everyone's different. So, if you're getting good results on 1 day a week, it's probably because you have a different circumstance in your life. That's okay. But I mean, there's still a limit for you. Once a week might work for you. Once every 2 weeks might not. So, there's still a cutoff somewhere where recovery ends and, where your muscles are going to start, getting weaker. Okay. Any other questions? I'm going to touch a little bit on the mental aspects of training, which is what Brooks was going to talk about. I'm going to touch on that for a few minutes. Okay, when you start training, when you walk into a gym, you don't want to have your mind thinking about anything else. Just like I just mentioned before, you could be going through a divorce or bankruptcy or IRS or whatever. Everyone has problems. Everyone in the world has problems. Problems don't separate successful people from unsuccessful people. The ability to manage problems is what separates successful people from unsuccessful people. Okay? So anyways, what you're going to do before you walk in the gym is put your problems on the back burner and forget about them for an hour or however long your workout lasts. And when you're in the gym, you got to be totally focused as if you go into combat on battling the iron, okay? It's like you go into war. You want to attack the equipment. You got to think positive. You got to believe that you can do it, but you also want to combine some anger in with it. Like you don't just think positive and think, I'm going to lift that up. You got to, I'm going to lift that fucking thing up. You got to get mad. Okay? You got to manufacture anger if you have to. Okay? Just however you got to do it, manufacture anger. Anger is important when you lift weights. It helps. You got to just attack the equipment, mix in some anger. You got to have the mind of a disgruntled postal worker. Head back to talk to the boss. We talked about mirrors before. Okay, mirrors are a distraction when you're trying to keep good focus when you're training. If you ever take sports psychology, you hear about broad external concentration and narrow internal concentration. Okay, broad external concentration, that's like what an actor would use on a stage. They have to be aware of their surroundings. They're taking cues from all around. The director will be waving his hands over here. There'll be other actors doing different things, and they'll be alerted by different cues. So they're broad external. Okay. Narrow internal is the exact opposite. At the Olympics, Donovan Bailey, the Canadian sprinter who won the gold medal, he was right next to the former world champion in that race, and then he got disqualified because he had 2 false starts. And after they disqualified him, he totally, went crazy. They had to escort him off the track. And after Donovan Bailey won, they asked him, "Didn't that distract you?" And when that happened, didn't that distract your concentration? And he said, "What are you talking about?" He didn't even know what went on around him. He was so focused, he was so within himself, he was so internal that he was unaware. He was just talking to himself the whole time. Okay, we're going to do this, we're going to win the race. He wasn't even looking around. Okay? It's the same kind of mentality that you have to have when you're doing the martial arts or karate. If you're going to break a brick or something, it's like it's you and the brick. It's like your mind's focused like a laser beam on that brick. Okay, that's the same way you got to think when you lift weights. Your mind is not broad external. You're not looking around. It's narrow internal, focused like a laser beam with anger mixed in with it. Okay, that's the way you got to think. Now, mirrors, that's broad external. That's looking out. You're looking out into the mirror. You're checking things out. That's not going to help you lift weights. Okay, the strongest people in the world don't use mirrors. There's a big myth about mirrors. The Highland Games athletes, there's no mirrors, and they pick up these big logs and pull cars up hills, and pick up rocks and boulders and throw telephone poles. They don't use mirrors. Michael Jordan doesn't need a mirror to do a reverse slam dunk. Acrobats don't need mirrors. Okay, there's all kinds of complicated athletic feats where no mirrors are used, right? So a barbell curl is not that complicated. You don't need a mirror for that. But just to prove a point, if you're going to say that mirrors were important, why aren't there any mirrors in the ceiling in gym? When you're doing a bench press, where's the mirror? Okay, how come there's no full-length mirrors? Usually you can't see your calves. Okay, you can't see the muscles behind you. Okay, you can't see your triceps, you can't see your lats, you can't see your rear delts, you can't see your hamstrings, you can't see your glutes, you can't see your calves. The only things you can usually see in the mirror is, the cable crossovers, feel it and squeeze it, and the curls. And that's it. Curls and cable crossovers, feel it and squeeze it. And that's it. Usually the weakest people are the ones that like mirrors. And the strongest people don't use mirrors. Okay? Powerlifters don't use mirrors. You see any mirrors in powerlifting contests? In the Olympics, do you see mirrors? Guys putting the snatch and clean and jerk, any mirrors? No. So anyways, that's a good tip for you. So if you're in a gym and it's filled with mirrors and you want to get strong, don't look in the mirror. When you're done, When you're done training, you want to, then you can look in the mirror when you go home. But I mean, when you're working out, be better off not looking in the mirror. Any questions?
I have just one question back
Sure.
a little bit further.
Okay.
Say, for instance, this is about that 50s day, okay?
Yep.
Say, for instance, you're using progressive, high-intensity training, 8 to 12 reps, variety of machines. Now, you say you choose about 4 or so to do your 50s day.
Right.
Where would you start out? Would you start out at the weight you can do that you couldn't start, could you, at where your failure weight is on your 8 to 12? You would probably start someplace else, wouldn't you? Is there kind of a rule of thumb you could give me?
Well, usually I train someone for, I wouldn't have a guy, if I like somebody, I wouldn't have them do a 50s day right away, right off the bat.
Right, of course.
Wait till they're, if someone says they're a Marine and they're tough and nothing hurts them and they can, then I'll do it, But I mean, a regular person comes in, that's modest,